Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Friday, April 17th, 2026, and today we are going to be talking about the state of New Jersey and Ana Lilia Mejia, who has won the special election in the 11th Congressional District in last evening's election, outperforming Kamala Harris's margin in 2024 by a whopping 12 percentage points across this House district that will now replace a Democratic seat after Mikey Sherrill, who is now governor of New Jersey, vacated her seat in 2025 when she won the governor's mansion, to which the seat has now been replaced, as I mentioned, by a Democrat, and the margin here is something worth looking at. The difference in performance from 2024 up until now isn't just contained to the presidential level. It also is contained to the House level. Mikey Sherrill was put on the radar and put in this position by winning this district by 15 points when Kamala Harris only won the district by roughly 8. A margin that really shows that there was a significant drop-off between the performance on the presidential level and the governor's level, or the House level, that would lead Mikey Sherrill to running for governor just a year later. And looking at the victory last evening being the best performance for Democrats in this district in 2 decades tells you the same story that election after election has been telling, that elections that have seen Democrats in special, regular, or off-cycle races have been consistently outperforming every single time. And it's another House race, one that maybe didn't capture too much national attention, but Republicans, again, this is a district that in any other type of circumstances, Republicans would have certainly invested in. Kamala Harris winning the district by 8, in theory, throws it within the realm of possibility for a Republican pickup. But to be quite honest, we simply knew that wouldn't happen in the day and age that is 2026, and yesterday's election, don't ask me why it was on a Thursday, actually confirmed those suspicions. Now, the victory here is one that when you look at the shift in margin from 2024, it is pretty consistent. You'll find that voters in this election were overwhelming in their change in support in favor of the Democrats compared to just a year and a half ago. A warning sign for what is to come this November, that Democrats are not losing momentum. They're not losing steam in these special elections, that Republicans have made the argument that as we get closer to November, more and more people will tune in and pay attention. Evidently, that simply is not the case. And I think a big part of this is that it isn't just the case of voters not paying attention on the right. It is an intentional decision from voters who might feel apathetic about the midterms after Donald Trump has broken a number of promises that maybe they believed in states like New Jersey that he would usher in on day one as he promised. Now, New Jersey is actually an interesting state. It became a subject of a lot of scrutiny for Democrats in 2024 because the margin there really terrified them. Looking at the election, looking at the 2026 midterms, you're going to see that the entire race is built on what we knew and learned from the 2024 election. That's why Democrats are seeing these massive reversions amongst Latino voters that learned and taught Democrats a lesson, a big one in 2024, that they were turning on the party. And Democrats had to do more to win them over. And even looking at New Jersey's 11th district in specific, there are some key precincts here that were overwhelmingly, Hispanic in comparison to the rest of the New Jersey electorate that had turned on Harris in 2024, but came running back for Mejia in 2026. It's a dynamic at play that shows that this Democratic overperformance, again, isn't just contained to New Jersey or isn't just contained to Tennessee as we saw it, or Arizona or Virginia or whatever we saw in Wisconsin and Georgia. Across the country, it has been so consistent that Democrats have had massive overperformances for a variety of different reasons. But the 2024 election really taught us a lot. And getting back to this point about why New Jersey was that subject of scrutiny, I told you the margin, but would you believe me if you weren't closely watching it in 2024? Would you believe me in saying that New Jersey was only about a 5-point race in 2024? Safe blue New Jersey that has not been this close since John Kerry in 2004, which is also saying something because even in 2004, that margin there was about 6.7%. When Harris won the seat or the state rather, by about 5.9%. The state of New Jersey and Virginia voted roughly the same in 2024, something that also was a major warning sign to the Democrats and a big pickup opportunity for the GOP if things were to go correctly. Because let's say Donald Trump had just outperformed his margin by, let's say, roughly 6 points, enough to get New Jersey over the finish line, you'd see really how much that advantage would have grown. But it also shows that New Jersey would go at the same time that Virginia would, or New Hampshire would, or Minnesota would. And Colorado and New Mexico actually voted to the left of New Jersey in 2024, a stark contrast with how it had voted in the past. In 2020, New Jersey voted to the left. In 2016, New Jersey voted to the left. In 2012, New Jersey voted to the left. In 2008, New Jersey voted to the left. In 2004, you see where this is going, it voted to the left. The fact that certain swing states that had been swing states in the entirety of the 21st century voted to the left of New Jersey in 2024 was a big warning sign to Democrats, and this 11th district was no different. But Mikey Sherrill being able to win by that margin comforted Democrats, but it made them worried about what this race might look like under a different contender. This Democratic primary actually did not go in the way that mainstream and establishment Democrats had envisioned. It was a race across the board that was extraordinarily competitive when it came down to the governor's election. It was one that, the House election. The Democratic primary was a lot of big names, including a former member of Congress, Tom Malinowski, who had represented the 7th District in Washington for 4 years. He decided to run, the lieutenant governor decided to run, the former secretary of state decided to run. And this race was a multi-way primary, don't get me wrong. But endorsements came in everywhere, across the board, a lot of big names. And when you look at that primary and the eventual election, you'll see that it was exceptionally competitive. It really could have gone any direction. But the big takeaway here isn't that the establishment candidates necessarily lost. It's more the fact that Analilia Mejia was the progressive and the more left-wing candidate who many centrist Democrats said they were worried about in this environment. They were worried about her ability to perform in the state of New Jersey. Now, looking at where we are, looking at where we are as it pertains to 2026, looking at where we are as it pertains to the November election, this is a good sign for Democrats, but it is also one where I think we need to understand that this performance, as overwhelming as it was for the Democrats, probably could have been finding itself just a tad bit better. Now, that isn't to criticize Mejia, who I think will serve out in this seat for as long as she remains and wants to remain in Congress unless there's some massive redistricting ploy by the end of the decade. But I will acknowledge that when you look at the Democratic primary turnout electorate, the Democratic turnout electorate in this race, it was roughly even. Democrats had a 20-point turnout advantage, and they won the race by 20 points. Now, you might be wondering, what is the difference? Why does that matter? Why is that something that we talk about? Well, as we consider elections and we talk about different things, while I do not think that the moderate wing of the Democratic Party that had casted doubt on Mejia's ability to win, I always thought that she would win by larger margins than Kamala Harris's, larger margins even than Mikey Sherrill's, I do see that there was very little persuasion when it came down to actual change amongst unaffiliated voters, right? So if Democrats outpaced Republicans on the net by roughly 20 points, but you have a huge chunk of undecided voters, you're going to find that they're not splitting in overwhelming fashion in favor of the Democrats as they did in some other districts. Now, that could be a unique case to hear, and I'm not here to make some broad generalization. I think Mejia had a stellar election performance, and that should not be taken away from her. I simultaneously believe that in the spirit of analyzing elections, there's always things to look at. What would this race have looked like under a different candidate? Maybe better, maybe worse, who knows? But the point is that turnout advantage is what drove home this victory. And it speaks broadly, too, that even though that Mejia was not winning the persuasion argument to the degree that other Democrats might have, the fact that turnout landed a 12-point overperformance at baseline is insanity. It's something that tells us that even though there might not be as much coercion and convincing on the support angle, Democrats are still bringing home slam dunk victories without it. Gone are the days that there is this argument to be made that in every single race, Democrats must pursue persuasion because turnout differentials can sometimes make or break an election. And in this case, it gave Democrats an immense opportunity to slam dunk the race. You can see that these shifts from 2024 and even the 2025 governor's race cannot be ignored. Mikey Sherrill had a massive overperformance in the 11th district when she was able to win the governor's race, but also a massive overperformance as it pertained to the governor election at large. When you look at the data, there were suggestions that, and I believed it, that New Jersey was going to be far more competitive. That by the end of it, it was going to be an election that came down to the wire. When you look at the polling, Mikey Sherrill led no more than by 5 points on the overall average. This is a state that, again, voted for Kamala Harris by larger than what the polls had suggested Mikey Sherrill's margin of victory would be. By the time we reached the final days of the election, even one of my favorite pollsters, Emerson College, said that New Jersey was going to be a 1-point race. By election day, just a few days after the poll was fielded, Mikey Sherrill would win by roughly 14. Democrats saw that, and they saw just how powerful that election was. It was the entire narrative that was built off the 2025 election season. They expected Virginia. New Jersey was the surprise. But I think to see that Mejia is able to not only outpace Harris and Sherrill of 24, but to outpace the 25 margin is astronomically good news for the Democrats, who I believe that as we get to election day in November, this race will not be all that competitive for the Republicans either. And I also think it means that at this baseline level, where persuasion may not be the driving factor in margin, in fact, it probably was not at all in this race, that the turnout differential is showing a 12-point improvement. Because a 12-point improvement on the House level from 2024 looks like this. Democrats gaining a significant number of seats and ending up at over 240 on the national stage. Something, again, Republicans simply cannot ignore. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out the Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video for you to watch, and then a playlist for my 2026 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.